Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107.
So, Candace Owens is catching a lot of heat over the Ahmaud Arbery commentary she made. But I have to admit, I agree with her. Kind of. When I think of Candace Owens, the first thing I think of is the woman who flew to Europe to attend a private meeting with very wealthy blue bloods regarding how to control the black vote in their country and the blueprint that they were implementing in the United States and how that could benefit them. And what was most intriguing to me about this meeting is that she started off with basically dragging her own mother for filth.
So this is the founding of Turning Point UK. Turning Point is a cover organization for white degeneracy to maintain the status quo, as we were talking about, of paternalism of whites over non-whites. And so I knew when you see the aesthetics of the room, I knew that it was money in the room and money backing this. And you can see here it was hosted by John and Irina. Isn't that strange? John and Irina Mappin, Lord and Lady Plunkett, and Peter Southall. So it's backed by some money. The Hitler comment is just literally the tip of the iceberg of the BS. But I just want us to look at the aesthetics of the room. The aesthetics of the room are crazy. There are two other people who are not white in that room, but they're servants. You'll see them like just in some random footage as the video goes by serving people. But if this is not the whitest of all white rooms.
Is the black exit from the Democrat Party, which is kind of fun. So Candace, tell a little about your story.
Sure.
So I just want to stop it here. I only let his intro play because the Q&A is what we're really here for. And they start the Q&A after she gives her intro. Notice he talked about he was an all-American success story, all the great stuff he did, how quickly he accomplished what he accomplished, blah, blah, blah. He referred to her as talent. You know, the talent. That's like an actor. And then she's going to come in and the first thing she's going to do is she's going to debase herself. The first words out of her mouth, mark my words, are going to be to debase herself and to uplift him. This is symbolic. So let's go ahead and let it play.
Isn't quite as ambitious as Charlie's. I definitely was not starting a company when I was 18 years old.
And that she is someone that believes in the ideas of freedom and liberty. And there's an old expression for those of us that love American baseball. It's you can't teach talent. And Candace is the greatest embodiment of that. Her charisma, her intellect, her wit, and her capacity to put forth ideas is second to none. And she has exploded onto the international stage over the last year, garnering billions and billions of views and impressions, and is probably the leading ambassador for international freedom that I can think of across the world. And she serves as our communications director and leads a project called, for those of you that don't know, called Blexit, which is the black exit from the Democrat Party, which is kind of fun. So Candace, tell a little about your story.
Sure. So my story isn't quite as ambitious as Charlie's. I definitely was not starting a company when I was 18 years old. I like to say that I started in the trappings of Black America. I come from a family of extreme poverty.
So first, I have to remember that my mic is over here. So first, notice that she debases herself as an individual. The second thing she does is she debases our entire community. She goes, well, my situation, not quite as ambitious as his situation, right? She places herself beneath him. This is where she needs to be in a room full of rich white people. And then she says, I got caught up in the trappings of Black America. She debases all of us collectively, which is essential. to this conversation, and you'll see why as it goes on.
Out of wedlock. My mother did not graduate high school. She lived in and out of group homes her entire life. And
then it's all the cliches. I was born out of wedlock. My mom didn't graduate high school. She was in and out of group homes her whole life. Like the trappings of Black America were just all trash over here. So she's going to do the debasing of Blackness, the debasing of herself. This is her whole entry. Now, you heard his entry as a white man. This is her entry as a Black woman to this room full of white people.
Father separated. They should have separated much sooner, but they eventually did when I was in high school.
Kind of giving a "I'm your negress" speech. That was pretty repulsive. But then the second thing I think of is she's so intelligent. And if only she used her powers for good. The third thing I think of is she's really pretty, y'all. And I'm going to try not to be distracted by the fact that she's beautiful, but it's compelling when she talks because she's so attractive. You want to listen to her. I think that's why they picked her. She's intelligent. She's beautiful. She's easy to listen to. But whilst I agree with a lot of what she said, I do think she missed the mark with a few things. So I would like to provide a happy medium to these extremist views on both sides and just go through the whole 17-minute tape that she made. So let's watch it together.
Hello, Facebook. Haven't done a video in a while, and I wanted to be sure to insert my opinion about this very viral case of Ahmaud Aubrey, who is being dubbed as just a jogger by the media. And I just kind of want to talk about really just the media's role in propaganda and how upsetting it is to me that Black America always seems to take the bait. Like, I have to say, this case, after all of the work that I have done these last 3 or 4 years to wake Black America up to the fact that every election cycle there is some story that they perpetuate that is supposed to make us think that we are being chased by the Ku Klux Klan. And yet here we are, a couple of months away from an election, and there are Black people running around saying that we are being lynched in Georgia. So let's just start with just the case and how it's been being reported. So first, you are hearing that it is a modern day lynching. That should instantly, if you are a Black American and American, make your ears perk up a little bit, because there are not really modern day lynchings that are taking place in America. There are not lynchings taking place in general. I mean, even at the time, at the height of the civil rights movement, when Black people were actually being lynched, it was approximately 3,500 Black people that were lynched from the entire period of 1882 all the way up until 1968. All right, so that's actually a very low number relative, not saying that lynching is okay, obviously, but a very low number relative to the population that we had at that time, or the population that we had all the way up until 1968. So lynchings are not common in general. The idea that people are going around lynching people in 2020 America, you can already know and you can smell that something is wrong with the story. All right.
Okay, so I agree with her, and I actually have already made a video about this, that the media is trying to manipulate Black people. Like, honestly, they're trying to get us outraged. They're trying to use us to push gun control, disarming citizens, all of these things. And they're trying to use Black America as a proxy to reach their end goal. All right, I agree with her there. It is a propaganda machine. And to be real, only a crazy person would vote for Joe Biden anyway. You guys know I don't have a problem with Trump. Biden is a whole weirdo out here, and he's barely functioning. So I don't think anybody needs to really fear greatly that Biden's going to become president, and we have no other viable candidates other than President Trump. So Trump's going to take the presidency. We don't need to turn this into a Trump thing. With that said, I also agree with her that this is not a modern day lynching. It is disgusting to say that. I have never called it a modern day lynching. Now, they did hunt that man down, and I'll talk about that later, but it's not a lynching. Insert photos here. Okay, so we can see that For lynchings, those were brutal things. These were community events. People brought their children. They were burning people alive. They were putting them on spits the way you would pigs. They were taking off of, their penises and things like that. Lynchings were a disgusting chapter in American history. And I don't like that she's throwing around the numbers for lynchings. First of all, people who burn each other alive, who take a man and cut off his penis and set him on fire and then group around it smiling and take a photograph and turn it into a postcard, I don't know if we can really count on those people for reliable numbers about what they did. They're going to try to minimize it. I don't even know that we counted every lynching that happened. So I think that it is disgusting to think that the same people who would do something so horrible would be honest about the extent of their behavior. What we do know about these people is that they committed mass genocide in places like Africa, like-minded people, those same people that stemmed from the countries that participated in the Berlin Conference. We know that they are barbaric to extremes, right? So I don't know if we can take such a barbaric group of people's, word for how many people they tortured. I just think that that's a little bit too trusting for me. But even if we did take the number at face value and we were somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000, which she is correct, is kind of the estimate that is officially given. We've seen lynchings, right? I just showed some pictures. That's still excessive for what it was. I mean, outright extended public torture turned into a party where children attended, that were memorialized on pictures, that were shared throughout the country. I think that there's just no way to minimize that. Not per capita, not anything. There's simply no way to minimize what happened at all, period. You don't get to say it went on for 100 years or so and only so many people got killed. That's not a good argument. And she would have had a stronger argument, and I could have rocked with you, Candace, if you would have just stuck to the fact that these weren't lynchings. Lynchings were disgusting things, and what happened to Ahmaud was horrible, but it was nowhere near a lynching. You could have just stayed there. You didn't have to go the extra mile and minimize something that can in no way, shape, or form ever be minimized. But let her keep talking.
So before I even saw the video, because I just was interested in the reaction to see how far people were going to take it, I saw that LeBron James issued a tweet, which quite frankly must have been the dumbest thing I have ever read. The tweet was that we are literally, we meaning Black people, we are literally being hunted as soon as we walk outside of our own homes. So this is either laugh out loud funny or really stupid. In my opinion, it's both. LeBron James doesn't even touch his own car door handles. LeBron James is currently building a multi-million-dollar, $100 million estate in Bel Air right now. And LeBron James has a white chef. He's got white housekeepers. LeBron James is somebody that has white people waiting on him hand and foot because he is successful and he has a lot of money, and that's what comes with money and success. So the idea that he is out there perpetuating some idea that Black Americans are literally being hunted for walking outside of out of their doors is pointedly ridiculous and should have made everybody go, okay, this is really dumb.
Ball. Dang, she's pretty, y'all. Candace Owens is fine. Okay, so her looks aside, LeBron James. LeBron James. LeBron James? Okay, I can roll with Candace on this one. Black people are not literally being hunted when we walk out of our doors. If that's what he said. Honestly, I don't know what LeBron James said because I have a brain and my brain knows not to listen to somebody who gets paid to bounce a ball around for a living. I mean, he's not the pinnacle of social, intellectual prowess. He's the pinnacle of athleticism. So if he's got something to say on how to improve your jump shot, let's be there. If he's got something to say on a social issue, I mean, not so much. What he can do is contribute to the, the legal fees of the family, or pay for the funeral, or anything other than give his opinion. But whatever, okay. I mean, I'll agree that if that's what he said, Black people are literally being hunted in the street, that's not the case. But we do have to admit that Black men are definitely killed at a rate that causes them to outnumber Black women when we are children. And then by the time we reach our 20s, Black women outnumber Black men. So there is a significant death rate in the Black community. And this is not solely to white people killing us. This is also to do with Black people killing each other, but she's going to go there and I'm going to go there with her in just a second.
So I finally look at the video. I'm expecting, based on all of the rhetoric, on all of the articles, which is saying that it's an example of a modern lynching, I am fully expecting to see a video of a mob of white people, maybe with a rope, maybe with some guns, just marching down the street towards a Black person so that they can kill him and make a mockery of him. That's what you should have expected based on the rhetoric that was perpetuating, and everybody was outraged left and right because of this 10-second clip. What I actually saw watching the video left me with more questions than answers. First and foremost, he was not being pursued in the video, obviously. It looked like he was running towards the car, and then when the two people who had guns, he went around and he attacked the person. So that actually left me with a lot of questions of like, what is going on in this circumstance? Who is recording this video? Because the person who was recording the video was obviously catching up to the situation. He hadn't been trailing this person. And I just wanted to know, how did everybody watch this 10-second clip and instantly think that this person was completely just a jogger who was being lynched? I don't even understand how that came across.
So I just want to stop there. I really caution all of us to try to make too much out of the videos. We aren't seeing the full footage of those videos, so we don't know the whole story. We just are seeing clips. And so I'm not going to engage in like the speculative game, because in reality, a million things could have happened. We can't map that out, and the only people that can map it out are the people that killed him. So we're only going to get their version of the story. So I'm still with her. This is not a lynching, but I don't think that we can assume to know everything from what we see, because we know that we are not looking at the full tape. So seeing all of the tapes from all of the footage, that would be beneficial in this situation.
Secondly, I noticed in the video and after reading reports that he's wearing khaki shorts. So just an easy question to ask is, if you are just a jogger and he is being described in the media as an avid jogger, this is something he does all the time. I do not know any avid joggers that jog in khaki shorts. Now, again, that's a question. That is not insinuating anything. It just is saying that if you looked at the video, you probably should have had more questions than answers. And yet the media and everybody was issuing a verdict that this was some crazy situation where a couple of white people woke up and thought, you know what? Today, I want to lynch a Black person. And I think this is the right guy. I see someone, let's go for it. Let's get in our pickup bed and go find ourselves a Black person. That was actually just made no sense. But people rarely pause to think, because people are desperate to foster this race narrative in this country. And because there's not many examples of people being lynched or Black people being pursued on foot by white people, the media really drummed this one up. All right, so we instantly should have been asking ourselves, is this guy just a jogger? That was sort of bottom line. I thought there's no way this guy was just jogging. And then you hear that the people that actually shot him had called 911. So for everybody that is saying that this person was, murdered, I can tell you right now, no matter how upset you are, this is not going to amount to a murder charge. The legal definition of a murder, you have to be able to prove that this was meditated, that there was some element of meditation. People do not call the cops before they murder someone. That is just not what somebody does. You don't pick up the phone and say, hi, 911, I'm about to go out and commit a murder. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so let's just talk about a couple of things. I also did not feel that he was out jogging per se, but he was running, okay? He was out running, walking, whatever he was doing. He was traveling freely on the land, okay? Whatever he was doing. I do think like his outfit was a little bit off. I noticed that too. I was like, he looks like he's wearing cargo shorts. That's not really jogging clothes to me, but nevertheless, if you say that you look at his clothing and that brings up questions, then you cannot then say that his skin color didn't bring up questions. You know, while I don't think that they jumped in their pickup truck and they were like, let's just go find some random black guy to kill, what I do think, based on clips such as this.
Mr. Bryan, you are known as Roddy to friends, correct?
That's right.
And in the police report, the McMichaels referred to a Roddy. I'm assuming that was you, yes?
Okay. Hey, hold on, Chris. You've been a prosecutor, and you can imagine that this prosecutor that's been in this case 24 hours, she's going to start throwing stuff around her living room if you start doing her job for her, okay? Because as good as you are, she'd probably rather do it herself.
So let's do this. You are afraid of the facts of this case, Counselor White.
Sir, I'm not afraid of anything. And I'm certainly not, with all due respect,
sure.
I'm not afraid of you, but I respect you.
And I respect you.
You are a brilliant, very capable lawyer, and you are you are a very good prosecutor. And my client is a mechanic with a high school education, and if you've ever been to the high schools around here, that's not necessarily saying much, okay? And I don't mind if the Board of Education doesn't like it. You know, I'm not their friend either, okay? But you can't be asking him questions about the substance of the evidence, because like I said, there's a young lady that's been in this case less than 24 hours who's going to be throwing stuff around her living room, and I don't want her mad at me, and I don't want her mad at my client.
New information about the hours and days leading up to the shooting death back in February of Ahmaud Arbery. We're hearing from the man who recorded this surveillance video believed to show Arbery walking into a home construction site shortly before the 25-year-old was shot and killed while jogging. State investigators are using this footage to piece together a timeline. News 4 Jax reporter Joe McLean spoke to the owner of that unfinished Satilla Shores home today. Joe?
Yeah, Larry English is the homeowner. He told me today he's been monitoring his home with cameras just to keep an eye on the place because he hasn't been able to work on it in person. Now he tells me he's heartbroken over what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. Larry English bought the waterside lot in the Satilla Shores neighborhood about 3 years ago. He's been overseeing the construction of a house there from his home about 2 hours away.
We went ahead and put cameras up where we could keep an eye on the boat and also any kind of traffic from the children in the neighborhood.
Those cameras are motion activated and will send an alert to English's phone if anyone comes inside their range, which he says happened 4 or 5 times over the next few months, and word got around the neighborhood.
A neighbor or two down had found out that I had some videos and some different people who had been on the videos. And I think in that time period, maybe he had some tools stolen out of the back of his truck.
Back on November 19th, neighbor Diego Perez texted English. He said, quote, "Goodness, if you catch someone on your cameras, let me know right away. I can respond in mere seconds. It's totally up to you. Our yards connect in the back. I can go either way, through the front or back, with your permission." A notification hit his phone on February 11th with this video. Because we don't know the person's identity, we're blurring it. You can see the person walking through the unfinished home. English quickly messaged Perez again, who replied, quote, "The police showed up and we all searched for a good while. I think he got spooked and ran after Travis confronted him. Travis said the guy ran into the house. Let me know if he shows up or if they find him. I appreciate you letting me know." Less than 2 weeks later, on February 23rd, a person believed to be Ahmaud Arbery triggers the cameras again. English tells me he didn't see that notification until almost a half hour after it hit his phone, at which point he called Perez. Larry, when you got that notification, how did you react?
I can't remember the exact words, but to the point that he said, well, no use to kind of worry about it because there's been a gentleman shot down here and I think he's dead.
English maintains he never saw anything on his security camera footage that can be considered illegal. English was later questioned by investigators about that video footage, and he said something important. He said the person in that February 23rd clip, believed to be Arbery, didn't resemble any person captured in any previous security video. English was later questioned by investigators about that video footage, and he said something important. He said the person in that February 23rd clip, believed to be Arbery, didn't resemble any person captured in any previous security video. English was later questioned by investigators about that video footage, and he said something important. He said the person in that February 23rd clip, believed to be Aubrey, didn't resemble any person captured in any previous security video.
This was definitely a neighborhood of good old boys. And while I agree with her that they did not just hop in their pickup truck and go, hey, let's go find ourselves a nigger to kill today, I don't think that that's what happened. But what I definitely think happened is that these are the type of men, based on clips like this one, these are the types of men who say, gal, come on over here. Gal, don't talk to him like that. Boy, what are you doing over here? They're those kind of people, you know, those deep country South racist type people. And I think that he was in a neighborhood for whatever his reasoning is, and we'll never know because he's not alive to give his piece. He was in a neighborhood where honestly he should have known better not to be there. Based on just seeing the little clips of them I saw, I wouldn't go into that neighborhood at all for any reason. I would know that I would probably be in danger. But it seems to me they saw a black boy who didn't belong to anybody. He was a black boy who didn't have a handler. I'm not buying the, you know, the whole we had burglaries going on thing. I think they saw a black boy, because I'm sure they call him boy, in their neighborhood who did not have a handler, and who, because they're looking at aesthetics, right? They see his skin, they see his outfit, doesn't look like he's about to do construction. And they decided that they were going to go get him, like just straight up. And the weapons that they chose were shotguns. And shotguns are for hunting. You can't, let's say if they did have to use their weapons and you wanted to incapacitate somebody because they were a danger or aggressive, but you didn't want to kill them. You can't incapacitate somebody with a shotgun. You can maim somebody with a shotgun. I mean, if you shoot a person in the leg with a shotgun, it's going to leave a huge hole. They may never walk again. So, you know, a shotgun is not the weapon that you would choose if you're not trying to shoot big game. And one of them being a police officer had to have known that. And I would be shocked if they're running around with shotguns and pickup trucks if they don't own other types of weapons that could have been more appropriate even if they wanted to arm themselves. So, you know, appropriate for a human, right? Even if they wanted to arm themselves and it wasn't going to be war, right? So if the revolution was popping, shotguns all day, right? But if I just am trying to incapacitate somebody who's breaking into my home, I'm using a 9mm, I'm using maybe even like a little 22, something pocket size. Well, maybe not a 22 in that situation, but you know, a Glock or something. I'm not going to be bringing out something I'd shoot a deer with. So you're hunting big game when you use a shotgun. So I think the truth of the matter is that no, he wasn't out just jogging like being an avid jogger. I think the media said that. His family doesn't strike me as the sort of people to use the word avid. So I think the media did that. Yeah, I definitely think the media had a lot to do with the avid jogger thing, or maybe she's just putting that on there because I've never actually seen the words avid jogger in a news piece, but she could have looked at a news piece I have not. So with that said, I do think he could have been out for a walk. I do think he could have been jogging. Everybody does not have money to buy, you know, proper jogging clothes. Like when you have, you know, habits like that, biking, jogging, things like that, to buy proper gear does take money, and everybody doesn't have that money. So I don't think these are rich people. So I'm not going to judge his clothing, but what I will say is if you're looking at his clothing, and if we're casting judgment on his physical appearance, like what he's wearing, then why wouldn't we cast judgment on the impression that his skin color would have had on the people looking at him? If he was a white man in cargo shorts, would the reaction have been the same? Given the vibe of the people, the clear indication these are very country, good old boy type people, probably not. So I think that we have to be honest in that too. I'm not going to defend him wearing cargo shorts. That doesn't look like you're an avid jogger to me. But it definitely doesn't mean that what happened was appropriate. It doesn't mean that he wasn't jogging or running. It doesn't mean that he wasn't taking a walk or doing anything like that. It doesn't even mean that he wasn't an avid jogger. You know, he could have just been a poor kid who put on the most comfortable clothes he had and did go out for the day. We don't know because he's not alive to tell us.
Okay, obviously something went wrong. So this will amount and can amount to a manslaughter charge, maybe a manslaughter conviction. This is not going to amount to a murder conviction. Okay, he was not the only person that called 911. Multiple people throughout the neighborhood called 911 because they were reporting seeing a person entering in a property that was not theirs, that was under construction. Now, I've seen people who first said that this was all a lie and he was just a jogger, now pivot and say, okay, he just liked to look around at architecture in the neighborhood and that was a thing. Well, first and foremost, okay, just a jogger wearing khakis who decides to stop in the middle of a jog to go onto a property that isn't his and enter in a construction site, a garage or a house, whatever it is that was under construction, and go in and expects nobody to raise a red flag. That's pointedly ridiculous. What I hate about this, and what I always hate about, when black...
Okay, so I do agree with her. It will likely that this will not turn out as a murder charge. It's very possible this will not turn out as a murder charge unless somehow they can prove that it really was premeditated, that they went out with the intention of killing him. I don't know that they did that. I honestly think they went out on some good old boy stuff. They were going to get this, Negro that was in their neighborhood, and they were going to take their weapons, and they were going to have themselves a little bit of fun. And I think that it went south. Honestly, I think they were on some racist stuff, and it went south. Now, as far as people not calling the cops before committing a crime, maybe I would, And part of me thinks and feels that, honestly, if you were an ex-cop and you were about to take out a shotgun and you were feeling a little bit hyped, it would be smart, right? It would be smart to call the police because you cover your back. This is an ex-cop. This is not the average citizen. So he really covers his back a lot by calling the police first, letting them know they're going to go after him and all of that, because he set the blueprint for, what will cover him if he takes any more action, if you know what I mean. So I definitely think that I'm not moved by the fact they called the police first. I'm not moved by the fact that several people called the police on this one individual. All that tells me is that this might have been more coordinated than we realize. We know that in the interview with the man who filmed, he acknowledged his friends call him Roddy, but he's trying to say he does not know the individuals who killed Ahmaud. But if that's the case, why did they refer to Roddy in the police report? So this really seems to me like they were like, this black kid's out here. Maybe there had been some activity in the neighborhood with a black male, and they were going to go get this black boy that they were positive was the one who was in their neighborhood who didn't belong there, that had been in their neighborhood previous. So I think that's more probably, if we put the pieces together, what happened. You had some white people who were good old boys in a neighborhood where they really don't want blackies, and there had been, a couple of sightings of a black person, a black male in their neighborhood, and then here he comes, Ahmaud comes, and he is over there at the construction site in his khaki cargo pants or whatever, and they were like, let's, boys, let's get our shotguns and go get us a nigger, you know what I mean? And did they go out there intending to just execute him? I don't think so. Did they go out there looking for a problem? Absolutely. And then they got their problem. And so I think that part of it is very problematic. But let's see where she goes with it.
Black America gets behind an issue like this is that we can never argue and be reasonable. We can never say, okay, you know what? He should not have been on the property because he shouldn't have. You should never be trespassing on someone's property. We should not be pretending that it's normal behavior to walk through construction sites, especially when there are no construction workers there in a private neighborhood. It's not like it was a building being built. It was on a quiet street. You walk up on somebody's property. He's not jogging in the video. He's walking slowly onto the property and you enter a building. Of course, people are going to start to call 911.
Actually, he walked onto the property and there's footage of him running away from the property. And I wonder why he was running, because he was in there for about 3 minutes. We only see a few seconds, like literally 5 seconds of footage that they loop over and over. I wonder what caused him to calmly walk into the property and then to run out of the property. Did somebody come onto the property? Did somebody yell at him? Did somebody approach him with a weapon? We don't know what else happened in that building because we don't have all 3 minutes of the footage. And so I'm curious about that. He didn't run into the property. He calmly walked in. We have seen that footage, and we see footage of him running out of the property. Him running out of the property makes me feel like he was not attempting to commit a crime, or had not actually, I should say, committed a crime in that property. Because if you had committed a crime in a property, you're typically going to try to not draw attention to yourself as you're leaving. You're not going to be in a full-on run coming out of the property. But again, all of what I'm saying, what she's saying, it's all speculation. We weren't there. We don't have all of the footage. We don't have the complete 3 minutes of footage from that property. We don't have the complete footage that was filmed by the man who filmed the murder. We don't have those things. So we can't make gross assumptions.
Okay, that escalated the situation in just his action of deciding to enter a property while he was on a jog in khaki pants. Obviously,
I just think she keeps referring to on a jog in khaki pants. And it's just, the double standard is crazy to me. If his physical appearance is relevant, then you can't say his skin color is not relevant. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're judging his physical appearance and you're going to say everything about his physical appearance is up for judgment but his skin color, I don't think that that is genuine. And the bulk of her argument here, and she's going to get to it, is this was not racial at all. But you can't make that argument and keep referring to his physical appearance and want to judge and cast judgment on everything about his physical appearance other than the color of his skin.
You know, escalated the situation and people were calling 911. Then you have this guy who they start calling 911, and this guy who says he's going to make a citizen's arrest calls 911, gives them a description, and gets in his car with his son and has a shotgun. If the point of the debate that people were having was whether or not that action was smart, whether or not making a citizen's arrest is a good idea, you would probably find that everyone sort of agrees that it's not really the best thing to do. Calling 911 is usually enough. If I saw someone entering a property and I didn't think they lived there, I would call 911 and I would leave it alone. But that is not the argument that people are making. They are calling this a modern day lynching. They are calling this as something being motivated by race. This is not motivated by race. The second you call 911 and you're entering another property, the motivation behind somebody trying to figure out who you are in their neighborhood is not racially motivated. It's because you do not own the property that you are on. There is no reason for people to be injecting race into this narrative. Argue it on the basis of whether you think a citizen's arrest is valid. You know, argue it on the basis of whether you think that Ahmaud Arbery deserved to die. And I don't see a single person who has made the argument that they think that this man deserved to die. But arguing it on the basis and pretending that this was racially motivated, it's stupid.
So I do agree with her, again, up to a point. It goes back to, you cannot judge everything about his physical appearance. You can't think that somebody looked at him and was like, he's in cargo shorts. He's walking into, you can't say that people judged everything about him but didn't consider his race. Did not consider his race. Even when they talked about the break-ins, they were saying it was a black man. So his race was considered. Even by their own word, his race was considered. It was a black man. They just weren't looking for some random man that they didn't know the color of. They were saying there were robberies by a black man. And so when they saw a black man entering the property, they thought the things were connected. So to say that people are injecting race in this, I think is very disingenuous. No, they brought up race. Race is how they identified that he was suspicious. By their own words. Race is how they identified that he was suspicious. So again, in the attempt to cape, which is her job, she is not being genuine. I can get with her on a lot of things, like avid joggers don't wear khaki pants. He did not belong on the property. Honestly, I just said earlier in this video, based on the kind of way these people are acting, I would not have personally felt comfortable in that neighborhood at all. Not driving up in a luxury car, I wouldn't have felt comfortable. Not taking a walk, I really wouldn't have felt comfortable. Not even coming through the town to get gas would I have felt comfortable. These seem like some very backwoods individuals. As a black woman, as a black person, I would not feel comfortable around them at all. I would be looking like, if we just met in a regular social setting, I would honestly come with biases based on, I'm not even gonna lie, the way that they talk, the way that they carry themselves. All of those things would have made me think that, you know, I'm on planet X and you're on planet Y, and something's gonna be need to be done to bridge that gap, because I'm coming with my preconceptions. And so for her to say that these people had no biases, no preconceptions, is crazy to me. I think, again, if we are being genuine, these are good old boys who may or may not, you know, have seen a black man in their neighborhood who didn't belong, who then saw this black man entering a property in a neighborhood where honestly it was probably not the safest place for him to be, and thought, we're gonna go get this Negro. You know, like, that's what they thought. And they went and they got him, and it escalated into what I agree with her is not going to be a murder charge. It might be manslaughter, and if they can get away with making it self-defense and let these people walk, they absolutely will. If there's any way they can get away with it, they will walk. But the thing is that you know, and I know, that they clocked his skin. You know, and I know, that they went out with shotguns. And a shotgun is not good for nothing but blowing a hole in somebody. Like, it's not good for anything else. So I think he knew that he was in with the police force, the district attorney's office, all of those things. And he wanted to just go and have not a little fun, but I think there was excitement behind his behavior, you know? I think he was pumped. He took his boy out with him. He took his son out with him, you know? And they were gonna go with their guns and be vigilante. Period. That's what they went to do. And they went with that level of aggressiveness because it was somebody black. I don't think anybody can deny that. Was it premeditated murder? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think they went out there hoping like, oh, we're going to kill him. But I definitely think that they didn't go thinking, we don't want to use these weapons.
I mean, it's incredibly stupid. Beyond that, when people like LeBron James perpetuate this idea that black people are being murdered and hunted by white people, it defies common sense because it goes against every statistic in America. You know, we have a culture issue in Black America because we constantly accept this lie that somehow we're the societal victims. You know, when in fact, when you look at the stats, if you want to start playing the race game, we're going to be the ones that look bad. You know, we represent 13% of the population, but we account for 40%, approximately 40% of all of the murders in this country, whereas white people account for 61%.
I hate when people do this. First of all, as far as murders go, if we look at the FBI crime statistics, we're talking, you know, thousands. In 2018, which was the last FBI UCR, Unified Crime Report, that was done, there were 16,214 murders in the United States. 16,214 in a population of 350 million people. If we want to play the race game, okay, so of the 16,000 murders that occurred in 2018, which is the last UCR that we have, black men specifically take the cake on that. They 54%. But if we look at the other types of violent crime, we look at rape and abuse toward women, things like that, things where men aren't fighting each other, but where weaker people are being attacked, white men disproportionately are represented above the per capita amounts, even with consideration that they account for such a large part of the population. So no, we don't want to play the race game, because if we play the race game, then we're going to find that black men beef with other men a lot, and we're going to find that white men like to attack and rape women and children. We could do this all day, but let's keep it real. If we look at the UCR for 2018, again, because it's the one that we don't have the 2019 stats out yet, we will see that whilst black people, specifically black men, tend to beef with other men a lot, and they fight, assault, and they murder, even though murder is the least committed violent crime in this country, if we also look at the numbers and play the race card, then we would see white men are the most dangerous to women and children. So black men beef with other men, white men rape and beat women and children. That's what the UCR shows. Disproportionately, white men are violent toward women and children. So we can play the race game when it suits us, right? She says black people don't want to play this game. Well, I guess we could. All it would prove is that black men at least know that their beef, if they have issues, they settle that with other men, and that white men are opportunistic and attack people who are virtually defenseless against them, like women and children. That is what we learn. We learn like things like violent larceny. White men commit that. We learn things like burglary, armed robbery. White men. So again, we can pull out murder and assault, which means that black men tend to fight each other, and then they also kill each other, which is egregious and wrong. Don't get me twisted. But I think if we're going to talk about violent crime across the board, white men are the perpetuators of violent crime. They also tend to have more victims when they commit crimes. So we're talking individual perpetrators. We're not talking about the numbers of people that they perpetrated against. So when white men commit crimes, they tend to commit crimes against more people. You'll have one white male shooter that will kill 10 or 30 people, or shoot or injure 10 or 30 people. You'll have one white male rapist who will rape repeatedly many women. So because of that, we can't just only count and only look at, and unfortunately UCR doesn't give us those victim counts, at least from what I can tell. It only gives us perpetrator counts. So even if we compared it apples to apples, the impact to the communities that these crimes are committed in vary based on how many victims any particular perpetrator has. I don't like playing this game. I've already done a couple of videos on the UCR crime reporting. I don't want to play this game because when you crunch the numbers, it doesn't look good for anybody. Okay, it just really doesn't look good for anybody. But we're not just going to call out black men. That's the thing we're not going to do. If we're going to call out violent crime, then we better call it out across the board, because there's a raping and beating of women epidemic. There's a violent arson epidemic going on, and black faces are not the faces of that.
Percent of the population, more than half of the population, and they commit less murders than we do. You can't just go around pretending that we are the people that are constantly being oppressed and are the people that are constantly, being hunted down, when we know that black people kill white people at 2 times a higher rate than the other way around. And I'm not saying this, by the way, to say all black people are horrible, and that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to have a more honest conversation about what is going on in this country. The purpose is that every single time a murder happens, it doesn't mean that it's racially motivated. Sometimes things just go wrong. Obviously, a lot of stuff went wrong in that video that we saw. That 10-second clip of that person running. A lot of things went wrong. First and foremost, I bet the person who had the gun wasn't expecting him to be lunged at. Obviously, if he was out to hunt the black person, okay, he would have shot him at a distance. When you're out hunting, you don't wait for the thing that you're hunting to grab your gun and go back and forth.
So I'm glad she brought this up, because Taz Exclusives here on YouTube did an analyzation of the tape, and I'm going to use his video clip now. Clearly, she didn't watch the tape very well, and a lot of us may not have. And he noted, and this is his video footage from his video on this, which I will link below. He noted that the reason that Ahmaud went is he was actually trying to avoid a confrontation. There was somebody standing in the middle of the street, and he went around the truck to avoid the person standing in the middle of the street next to the truck. And when he went the other way, that person started to head around the front of the truck. So Ahmaud didn't run up on anybody for a fight. He was trying to avoid a fight, and they came for him. And a lot of what happened in the front of that truck and on the side is obstructed, and all we see is the end part where they are kind of struggling. So I think in an attempt to be really defensive of these men, she is not having clarity of thought. And I am so glad that Taz Exclusive sort of broke down that tape, because I didn't notice that either, that there was a person standing there that he was trying to avoid by going around the other side of the vehicle where the person was not. And then you could see that person's legs then going around to the front of the vehicle to meet him, to intercept him. And I think it's critical that we recognize that, and not that Ahmaud attacks somebody with a gun. Who does that? Who literally runs towards somebody, you know, who has a gun or anything like that? And also, who's to think, you know, we don't know that he didn't realize the level of danger that he was in until a weapon was varnished. We don't know when the weapon was varnished. We know there was a truck in the middle of the road with a person standing outside the truck on the driver's side, and Ahmaud went running to the passenger side to go around the truck. And then the person that was on the driver's side went around the front of the truck to meet Ahmaud. And from what I hear, both of the people were armed. This is a scary situation to be in for any person. What would you do if you were, you know, running down a street, or you were in a neighborhood and there's a car blocking the middle of the street and there's two men with guns? None of us knows how we would react in that situation. We're not going to try to stop and have a conversation, and we're going to try to defend ourselves if we come in close contact with those people. What else would you expect? This guy might have been an ex-cop, but he wasn't in a cop's uniform. So there's no reason for Ahmaud to have thought that he should just stop and just willingly give himself over to and let's keep it real, because race does matter in a lot of cases, two hillbilly white people with guns. That just defies all logic.
Obviously, we're not going to be able to prove the standard that he wanted to hunt him, but wanted to wait until the guy grabbed his gun and went and wanted to wrestle with him. That's not, I mean, that just defies common sense. If he wanted to kill the guy, he would have fired off a couple of shots before he got anywhere near him. I think he wanted to make the guy stop, you know, and intimidate him and wait for the cops to get there, because he was convinced that this was the guy that was recently burglarizing his home. Unfortunately, Ahmaud Arbery, who has a history, you know, of crime, lunged at him, and things went off from there. And it's unfortunate that, you know, this person ended up dead in a situation that didn't need to ever, you know, culminate into a death. But what's going to happen is it's going to be a manslaughter charge, and the defense is going to argue for self-defense. He might entirely get off on a self-defense, on a self-defense claim in this case, because, like I said, Arbery did charge him. You know, you can see the scuffle. You did charge him. Now, I'm not saying he should. I'm saying he could. So save your outrage for when that likely or could happen. You know, from everything that I'm seeing of people perpetuating this and pretending that, you know, this is anything more than just election fodder. When our media declined, they all had the video of him trespassing on property, and none of them published the video until yesterday, because they want Black Americans angry. They want Black Americans to constantly believe that we're being oppressed and that white men are trying to kill us at every turn. You know, they could have easily given the videos more context. They could have published the video of him entering the property. They could have told you about the 911 calls that were coming throughout the neighborhood, and everyone would have quieted down a little bit. But Black Americans are so reactive. We got people that are wearing I run with Maud t-shirts, showing up to protest, showing up, you know, getting ready to riot if this person doesn't get this or doesn't get that, because we never pause to think. I can think of no other race that does this. Literally no other race that does this. In recent...
So this is a defense that I don't like. When it's not clear that something was self-defense, people then start to attack the past character of the individual that's been murdered. So, and I made a video about this on my membership page in full, so I'm not going to go into detail. But if somebody is actively raping me and I manage to murder them, I don't have to defame their character at all to prove that it was self-defense. I was actively being raped and I defended myself. Clear self-defense, right? When self-defense is not clear, completely clear, what has to be done is then you have to reach back into things that don't have anything specific to do with the situation, and you have to try to make an argument that this person wasn't a good person. So it's likely they were doing something wrong, which more justifies the fact that this situation escalated. Because this is just the sort of person to escalate the situation. So that is what people do when you don't clearly have a self-defense case. You then start attacking the victim, the person that was murdered. You start attacking them. And it becomes the ex-cop against the ex-convict. Which, let's be clear, it's not like this man has a string of like egregious, arrest records or anything. It's not like he's a violent criminal who just escaped out of jail or something. He had some incident when he was a child in school, and children do stupid things. And again, I don't think this is a family with money or anything like that. But I hardly think we can reach back into his teenage years and say, he has a criminal history. So but did they know about his criminal history? Like, I'm trying to understand. Was the cop aware of who he was? The ex-cop who shot him aware of who he was? Were they aware of his criminal history? Because if they weren't cognizant of this, I don't see how it's relevant to the situation that they were in. Like, I just need it to all make sense. And it's not all making sense. Again, he didn't charge him. I'm going to show the footage again. Thanks to Taz Exclusives, we can see that there was a man standing in the street on the driver's side next to the truck, and Ahmaud ran to the other side of the vehicle. That, to me, is you're trying to get away. And you can see that then that person starts to circle back around the front of the vehicle to meet him. And whoever jumped out of the tree or whatever happened, like, I just don't know. But that's not a charging. That's somebody trying to get away. So I think she should retract that all the way back. However, I will say this. They will likely get off with manslaughter, aggravated assault, or nothing. They might just walk. If they can pull it off, they will pull it off. I just think that the assumption that there would be less outrage if we knew that he was looking around a construction site, there still would have been outrage, because him entering into a construction site and looking around does not then make what happened to him okay.
English maintains he never saw anything on his security camera footage that can be considered illegal. English maintains he never saw anything on his security camera footage that can be considered illegal. English maintains he never saw anything on his security camera footage that can be considered illegal.
This doesn't. And I'm tired of people trying to make it seem like he was trespassing and therefore it all makes sense. Like, it doesn't all make sense. Somebody simply looking at a property, walking onto an open construction site, which on my video on my membership page, I talked about this. When I was little, there was a construction site and it had these big concrete cylinders. And I like to play over there. I like to try to catch snakes, and I would run over there. It was very naughty. It was not a good thing to do. I'm not excusing my behavior, but I would run over there and I would play, because back in the day, we would go outside in the summertime and we would just stay playing outside for 8 hours a day. It was safe. You know, we'd bike over to my uncle's store and, bike back. Now, granted, I was in a neighborhood where people knew me, but I was on a construction site. Had somebody seen me or seen my little brother there or something like that, and, does that give them the right to grab a shotgun and jump in a pickup truck and try to cut me off in the middle of the street? No, that is an overreaction. That's an overreaction. It's not like he had a vehicle and he was loading in supplies from the house into his vehicle or anything like that that would warrant like such an extreme reaction. And that extreme behavior, like even if we buy the trespassing thing and we roll with that to the extent that they want us to roll with it, that extreme behavior doesn't come from a rational, normal thinking person. There's something else behind hopping in a pickup truck with 2 shotguns for somebody that you saw just walk onto a property and walk out with nothing. And I hear some people saying he took a hammer, but apparently the homeowner is out today saying no crimes were committed on their property. And even if he took a hammer, you don't grab a shotgun, nor 2, and hop in a pickup truck to chase somebody over a hammer. No rational thinking person does that, which means that there was some other motivation involved in this.
In New York City, a Jewish person, a Jewish rabbi, was stabbed in the head during a service.
And then she drags her own people, which I just don't understand. It's like when she drug her mother. If she'll drag her own mother, she's gonna drag y'all too, okay?
So my story isn't quite as ambitious as Charlie's. I definitely was not starting a company when I was 18 years old. I like to say that I started in the trappings of Black America. I come from a family of extreme poverty. Out of wedlock. My mother did not graduate high school. She lived in and out of group homes her entire life, and father separated. They should have separated much sooner, but they eventually did when I was in high school.
She doesn't even respect her own mother. So why would she respect the Black community?
Literally for being Jewish by a Black man in the neighborhood. And that was one example in a string of crimes that were being perpetrated by Black people to Jewish people in the neighborhood. There was never, ever, ever any Jewish person that came out and said Jewish people literally are being attacked when they come out of their homes, are literally being hunted by Black people. You want to know why they didn't do that? Because that's hyperbole. It sounds foolish. It sounds emotional. It sounds irrational. Okay. Yes, somebody did something, and it's a horrible thing when any person ends up dead. But to only speak about what has gone on confined simply to race, it's because of the color of their skin. It doesn't make us sound intelligent. It makes us sound angry and emotional and irrational. And we need to have a more honest discussion when these things happen. It is not always about race. It is not Blacks murder whites and that's just murder. It is not, Blacks murder Blacks and that's just murder. And then the final clause is if a white person kills a Black person, that's instantly the Ku Klux Klan racist lynchings coming back from the civil rights era.
So I agree with her. It's not always about race, but I think there's a middle ground between making everything about race and acknowledging when there could be a racial aspect. The reality is none of us is blind. So race does play a part in our perception of people. And to behave as if that's not the case, or it's not the case when crimes are committed, but it might be the case in other situations, is very disingenuous. The fact of the matter is, right or wrong, we all consider the way a person looks, whether they're attractive or unattractive, whether they, look scruffy or look well put together. Why do we dress up for job interviews? Because physical appearance does matter. People pay attention to that. And it's not just whether you're clean shaven or not. People pay attention to your skin color. We notice those things about each other. So it's just disingenuous to say that when a crime is committed, all of a sudden what a person looks like just ceases to matter. It just never came into play. When in every other part of life, that is a consideration that we make. It's something that we think about. Again, right or wrong, I'm not speaking to that. I'm just saying, come on now. Race matters. It mattered to them. They mentioned race in their own police report. So if they can talk about race in their police report, why can't we talk about race as an aspect of this too? I do want to add, though, she does have a point. Every single time a white person kills a black person, it's not because they're black. Like, there are other reasons that a white person might kill a black person. It could just be they have a beef and one of them is black and one of them is white. That doesn't mean that that's the case in this situation. But we have to be honest that a black person and a white person being in a crime together where one gets injured does not make it racially motivated in and of itself.
We already know that, Ahmaud Arbery has a history with mental health issues, that he's been arrested before. From what I'm hearing, there's a lot more to the story that people don't understand. And as I said, even if it comes out that he was responsible for burglarizing that entire neighborhood for a month, that doesn't necessarily justify people jumping in their truck and trying to make a citizen's arrest. But what it does should stipulate to at least everybody is that this situation is not about race. It's just about somebody being in your neighborhood that shouldn't have been on private property, someone calling 911, and things getting botched. So people, you can be upset with me. I really don't care. I've never been a person that cries when, oh my God, Candace, you didn't take the bait. Oh, Candace, you're not allowed to be black anymore because you didn't senselessly defend someone. You have to just, no matter what, you defend your own. That is stupid bottom feeding mentality.
Okay. Obviously, we're not taking Candace's black card. I hate that too. I've had people try to take my black card. All right? All the time. People try to take my black card and tell me I'm not black or I'm not part of the black community. That's stupid. I'm clearly part of the black community. You could say it all you want, but when people see me, they stick me in the black community. And the same thing is for Candace. She's got her own views. That doesn't make her not a black person. As far as taking the bait and, it being bottom feeding and all of these things, I agree that black people don't have to defend everything that we do amongst each other. Everything that black people do is not defensible. That's definitely not the case. That would be a stupid ideology for us to have. But in this situation, like I said, and I've said it before, I think it was a case because they brought race into it. They said a black man, and then they saw a black man entering, They brought race into it, right? They brought race into it. So since they brought race into it, we don't get to demonize the people who roll with what they have said. That's just not a thing. But it is a very bottom-feeding mentality to think that everything black people can do can be excused and black people can do no wrong. We can't improve our community if we aren't willing to look at the flaws in our community. So she is right there, but she's a bad messenger for it because while so much of what she says I can agree with, she takes it that extra step further, and it just doesn't need to go that extra step further. It's like with the lynching thing. You didn't need to take it that extra step further. You could just say, clearly, this is not a lynching. Like, lynchings were horrible things where people were maimed and crowds were there, and they made a party out of torturing somebody. This was clearly not a lynching. You didn't have to then go to try to minimize what lynching was by saying, well, there weren't so many lynchings, so it wasn't so bad. No, if there were 5, if there were 1,000, if we could believe people who act like that about the numbers, it would still never take away from how disgusting and brutal and literally terrible that was. It just would never take away from that. So, she always takes it that step too far, where she says everything about Ahmaud's aesthetics mattered. His cargo shorts mattered. All these things about him mattered except the color of his skin. It's like, so you've clocked everything he was wearing, but the color of his skin didn't come into play. When she says, when she compares, saying that there could have been a racial aspect to this because the men who killed him brought up race, to being bottom feeding. I think that that's just a dig, to say, well, you're stupid if you think there's a racial aspect to this. When we know that she has the job that she has because she's
is the black exit from the Democrat Party, which is kind of fun. So Candace, tell a little about your story.
Sure.
She has the job she has because she's Black. They want to appeal to Black people, and they didn't pick a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person to do that. They picked a Black woman to do that. They picked a Black woman who has unmistakable Black phenotype to peddle this message of Black people going conservative and turning Republican because she's Black. She has her job, and she has the voice she has, and she's been embraced by the conservative side because of her Blackness, because she's a Black woman who will say the things that we normally hear only coming out of white mouths. That is why they pay her. So for her to say race plays no part is very, very disingenuous. She knows that she's the Black face of the Conservative Party, and that she is there to be the chocolate face of the Conservative Party. So if we can be manipulated, because that's what they're trying to do, that's what she went to that conference where she drug her own mother to talk about. If we can be manipulated and coerced into engaging in a certain sort of voting by a Black face, they took her to Europe as the Black authority on how to change Black people's minds on things. Then why all of a sudden is race not relevant to other decisions that people make? Your bread and butter, Candace, is your Black face spewing conservative rhetoric. That's your living. That's how you make your living. You are the Black face for conservatives. That is what they depend on you to be. They depend on your Black face to speak to other Black faces. So their race matters, and it all makes sense, and it's okay. But in this situation, it's bottom feeding to bring up Blackness or try to justify that looking at a property doesn't equate making it okay to kill somebody. Or doesn't justify grabbing two shotguns and jumping in your pickup truck and literally hunting somebody down. I call it hunting because if you're stalking somebody, because I did listen to the police tape. If you're like, we're watching him, we're following him with shotguns, that's a hunt. That's a hunt. The fact that they didn't just slaughter him in the street, to me, just speaks to the fact that they're partially human, obviously, and aren't barbarians who are psychopaths that would just kill somebody right the minute that they saw them. But trust me, they were up to no good going out in their pickup truck with two shotguns. That was not, we're trying to be responsible citizens. That was not, we're not looking for a problem. That was not, we're not trying to hurt anybody. We can't read the situation that way. They didn't think about harming him until he started wrestling for the weapon. Really? That's why they were in a pickup truck with two shotguns? That defies all logic.
There are plenty of examples of innocent Black people who are killed that I speak out about. Black on Black crime obviously happens way more often. Over 90% of Black people are killed by other Black people, and there's never any riots, any protests, or any marching about it because somehow if we do it to our own, it's okay.
Obviously, Black on Black crime is problematic, more problematic than anything else. And I hate to say it because, again, on my memberships page where I could talk a little more freely, I talk about the fact that we slaughter each other. I just did a piece on my memberships page about, a Black woman who was beaten to death by other Black people. You have to be some kind of psychopath to beat somebody to death. That's not an easy thing to do. Punching, hitting somebody until they die. That is insane. That is a problem. And we have to recognize as Black people, when we overwhelmingly attack and brutalize each other, we can't then expect anybody else to respect us. We can't. It's like if you have a girlfriend or a lover and you're always dragging her for filth and putting her down around other people, or dragging your husband or your boyfriend around other people, you can't then expect them to respect that person when you bring them around. And I feel like Black people, we do that. Again, she's the wrong messenger, but we do that. We do brutalize each other and treat each other very badly and kill and maim, and in the case of this young woman, beat each other to a bloody pulp. And we don't have outrage toward each other and the people in our community that do that, to say that this needs to be corrected. There is an excellent book titled, and I always say that every young Black man should read this book, Black on Black Crime, Black Annihilation in Service of White Domination. And I suggest that every Black man and woman read this book, because it really talks about the mentality that causes us to serve the agenda that is against our community by doing the work of people who would like to see us dead. And so I do not think, though, that because Black people brutalize each other, that we then have to ignore the fact that brutalization goes on in other sects. Black people are disproportionately harmed by police officers. We know an innocent Black woman, a frontline worker, who was a hero, was just shot to death because 20 rounds were let off in her house, even though she has no criminal history, by the police in her own home. We know that, these things do happen disproportionately to Black people. We know that racially motivated acts do happen. We also know that all communities harm each other more than outside communities. So most white people, are who harm other white people. That's the same for every community, but definitely in the Black community. We do the dirty work for others to the point where they don't really have to do their own dirty work. And we do need to address that. But again, Candace is the wrong messenger because she always goes too far, and people always seem to talk about these things from polars. I'm willing to admit where Candace is correct, and I'm willing to pull back where she's really going too far.
Just be more honest. Have a more honest discussion about things, and stop taking the bait every election year. Like, how can it literally be every 4 years with this stuff and nobody's waking up? Grow up. Have a more adult conversation. Argue the real tenets of this case. I mean, there's plenty of room to debate, what happened here without pretending it's white America after Black America again. Even the articles, by the way, we visited the neighborhood where this happened and there were Trump 2020 flags and MAGA flags in some of the windows. I mean, how can you be so gullible to not realize this is just about making you angry and emotional in another election year? That's the part I don't understand. It's like, how can we just keep falling for it? Is there going to be like one year, like maybe 2028, where Black America's like...
I think I'll stop it there because I don't want to make this about Trump. I've already said only an idiot would vote for Biden. That man is a whole fool. First of all, he likes having Black children sit on his lap. He learned to like that. He likes it when they rub the hair on his legs. Like, Biden lost me when he did that weird stuff, but I don't think that we need to make this about the election. I think unless something goes horribly wrong, Trump is going to be our president for 2020. Like, the 2020 elections, it's going to come out in Trump's favor. I don't think anybody needs to worry about that at all. And I don't want to turn this into a, Democrat versus Republican sort of situation. We know that the liberal media is trash. I think what she doesn't realize is that Black people know the liberal media is trash, but we're not shooting for the Republican side either. Black people are just done, I feel, overwhelmingly with being manipulated, period. And people like her or people on the far left who swing to these extremes, you guys are pushing those of us who are thinking Black people away. We don't want everything to be about race all the time, but we also don't want somebody on the other side saying race has nothing to do with anything, especially when they're hiring a Black person to peddle that crap to us. Like, girl, they hired you because you're Black. And then you're going to tell us race has nothing to do with anything? I can't. I can't. It's an insult to our intelligence. And she would be far more effective if she would simply be honest. Like she said, if we could just have an honest conversation. Were these people lynching him? No. Clearly this was not a lynching. Should he have been on the property? No, he shouldn't have been on the property. Was race involved in this? Yes, by the words of the people that killed him themselves. The fact that he was a black man played a part in why they followed him, because they had seen, according to them, black men in their neighborhood who was doing multiple robberies. That is what they said. They brought race into it. So race did have something to do with this. And do we think in good faith that they got in their pickup truck with 2 shotguns and called the police to say that they were watching and following another human being? Do we honestly think that's because they had the best of intentions and they just wanted to make a citizen's arrest? Absolutely not. Let's be honest. That is the final point that she and I can agree on.
Weeks later, on February 23rd, a person believed to be Ahmaud Arbery triggers the cameras again. English tells me he didn't see that notification until almost a half hour after it hit his phone, at which point he called Perez. Larry, when you got that notification, how did you react?
I can't remember the exact words, but to the point that he said, well, no use to kind of worry about it because there's been a gentleman shot down here and I think he's dead.
English maintains he never saw anything on his security camera footage that can be considered illegal.
You know, the babies, the future, the black babies, that's what it's all about. You know, they talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm gonna tell you like this, man, the black youth is what matters the most. And that's what we gotta do, because that youth is what's gonna be the ones to liberate us. You know, we gotta hear from them. So as we give it to them, and we give this, they use these tools to build with, this is our future right here. I mean, it's the biggest investment you can make. Science Institute, you gotta invest. And there's African Senate institutes all over the country. You gotta find where they at. You gotta support those people, because there's people out here that actually have institutions and that are actually in the community doing things. You know, it's not about what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. You have people doing it. So it's happening. You just gotta get with the brothers, help the brothers, support the future, support yourself. That's what we're doing.